Paying for business school is expensive, but what if you didn't have to go it alone? That's where Juno comes in. Juno brings thousands of students together to make lenders compete for our business, which means you get a lower rate than you could on your own. It's free, it's fast, and it's already helped more than 230,000 members secure over $1 billion in student loans at better rates. Join today at juno.us/M7A.
Literally saw an MBA as a way to solve for freedom first, before solving for entrepreneurship. But when it came to entrepreneurship, it's mostly the networking one. So that can help in multiple dimensions. It could be raising funds, but also just brainstorming ideas. And down the line, I think it will be extremely helpful to have had the MBA.
Welcome everyone back to How Did You Get In? We're so excited to welcome Simo Mohamed Senhaji Rhazi to our podcast today. I had the pleasure of working with Simo while we were both at Wayfair in growth marketing for a few years before we both went on our business school journeys. We're super excited to hear about his process of applying to business school and ultimately getting into and attending Wharton. And we're excited to also hear what he's up to now in Canada in the startup scene. So thank you, Simo, for joining us today. We're so excited to have you.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
To get us started, we'd love if you could tell us about your background. Where are you from, where you did your undergrad, and a little bit more about what you were doing before business school.
Yeah, happy to share. So I am from Morocco. I was very fortunate in that I could attend the French schooling system. Most of my friends went to France to study, and I actually followed them in that path. I spent a year in France studying engineering, but I realized the whole point of going abroad is to explore other cultures. When in France, I was exposed to all the same mindsets, same friends from high school. It was very comfortable, but I needed to move beyond that. So I decided to go to the US with no college admissions. I literally didn't know anyone. I didn't even speak English, but I went there and I chose Boston initially because I knew it was where there was the highest concentration of schools in the world. So I went there on a very uncertain journey, but very rewarding at the same time. Through a lot of perseverance, I was able to gain access to Boston College, where I attended my undergraduate studies. I studied finance and math. The experience was really good in that it really gave me what I was looking for, completely different backgrounds, completely different mindsets. I was the only Moroccan on campus. Great journey, but the school was amazing. It was a lot of diverse mindsets, but also very good academics, very good teachers. I felt empowered, and I studied finance almost by default because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I added math to the mix as a second major. I did intern in finance, but then it was very challenging to recruit full-time. And that's the first realization as an international student of the additional obstacles I needed to face when applying for different jobs and so on. And I remember I would apply to the same opportunities as my friends, local friends. I would not get invited to interviews. And in fact, most employers don't sponsor international students. So that's the moment when I felt that I needed to eventually solve for that. And it became a big pain point in my career, generally speaking. But I was fortunate, very fortunate that I was able to gain access to Wayfair. Amazing place. I really liked the growth trajectory it was seeing at that moment. People seemed very, very approachable. I didn't realize how good Wayfair was until I experienced other things at McKinsey and let down the line. Because this was my first job out of school. And the beauty of it was that you can really make a difference and see the impact of your work very quickly. You also own a lot of responsibility. Alex can attest to that. Very early on, you can manage multi-million-dollar budgets. And that was very rewarding. And eventually, I became manager, also was able to develop those early managerial skills and lead a team, set up a vision. It was really fulfilling, but at the end of the day, there were those other elements I mentioned earlier. One was that I felt very constrained in the sense that I could not move employers easily with my work authorization status. I knew for a very long time that eventually I wanted to be more entrepreneurial, and moving to startups was not out of the question in the US because of, again, work authorization. And I felt too dependent on one employer, just from a principal perspective. So if I were to apply to even places outside of the US, I would not be eligible because in Europe, particularly, you automatically have a master's degree, which I didn't have, even though my experience was more substantial at that moment. So those elements on top of a lot of meetings with leaders at Wayfair who became mentors, two of whom wrote my recommendation letters for MBA. I learned that consulting was very exciting, at least from the outside. It was an opportunity to discover different things and be part of influential meetings, so to speak, and learn about different industries very quickly. So I was attracted to that. And for me, I went to business school because I wanted to solve for all of this. I wanted first to gain access to the international market so that it's not a constraint anymore, even from, let's say, a psychological perspective. I wanted to explore more entrepreneurial journeys. So at Wharton, I actually focused in entrepreneurial majors and classes. And I wanted to gain credibility, but also try consulting for a couple of years while I am solving for the work authorization aspect.
What a winding and amazing journey to have the bravery to sort of leave France, leave the comfort of what you understood and knew and your friends and say, I'm going to figure this out and move even without a clearly defined path. So thank you for sharing all of that. I am curious, was it at Wayfair or somewhere else where the idea of like an MBA first came? Where did you first hear about an MBA? It sounds like you knew that it was a path to get to consulting, but how did you even know what an MBA was? And then how did you start to think about what your approach to applying would be?
Yeah, initially I didn't know, coming into Wayfair, I didn't know what consulting was, what an MBA was. I had no idea. I was just starting there. And, as an international, I didn't even have local mentors who knew about the local, system, so to speak. So as I came into Wayfair, I didn't think about business school. I didn't think about next steps. All I was thinking about is let me get the most learning I can, make the most impact I can, and hope that the work authorization aspect will get solved so that I can continue my journey. I started learning about business school through the lenses of mentors at Wayfair, mostly. So Alex knows probably all of them, and they were telling me about their paths, and I feel like maybe there is a bias in that regard at Wayfair because the leaders that I respected the most went through MBAs. So I guess that's the mindset at Wayfair. So I got a lot inspired by that a lot. And then over time, even some of the colleagues that I enjoyed working the most with started going to business school. Alex being one of the main ones. Alex, I remember vividly the day she announced that she got into HBS. I was really happy for her because very candidly, I really appreciated working with Alex a lot. It was always a joy with a lot of impact. Alex is just an example, but there were many others. So the idea of business school to me started representing the idea, like a door towards success or a successful mindset, successful path. So that's how it came along. On top of what I mentioned earlier, I was started recruiting abroad as I saw that the work authorization aspect was very uncertain. It's a lottery system. If in case you didn't know, it's a pure lottery system. So I needed to find a solution, and the MBA was part of it. So after the MBA, even if I was not in the US, I could easily continue and pursue my career elsewhere.
Well, first of all, Simo, thanks for gassing me up. It was great to work with you as well. But yeah, I think you bring up such a good point about exposure to people that you admire who went down a certain path just opens your eyes to a path that you just weren't even considering before. And honestly, the same thing for me in a lot of ways, like just seeing how so many successful people in that company that I admired went that path as well. I think it just makes you more confident that it can be a good choice for you if it feels right for you. So, and yeah, I totally understand the timing of applying to the MBA had to do with some work authorization concerns, but obviously that's not something that you are going to necessarily lead with in your MBA application. So I am curious, like, what's the narrative that you wrote or crafted throughout your application?
Yes, yeah, I did not lead with that. I can confirm. I can confirm that. Though I'm sure all admissions officers, know about that. So for me, I tried to dig deep in my application process, and I'm happy to tell you about the journey. But to your question specifically, for me, I really dug deep and tried to be the most authentic possible. And for me, the answer, which still remains true today, when I think deeply about it, is that entrepreneurial journey. Not because I want to, get wealthy or whatever that might be. That's not it at all. It's more about the opportunity to make a difference in the world. I really mean it. To me, that's the only way I can sustain a career, and I can be driven in life, generally speaking. So at Wayfair, one thing I did mention earlier, and that came into play when I was applying to business school. I was very fortunate, and I'll always be grateful for my experience there. But at the end of the day, especially after you get the business and you settle well, I didn't find meaning in what I was doing. The end goal was still to sell furniture, which I can understand is very valuable to a lot of people. And also the mission at Wayfair, I think it was along the lines of making you feel home, in a way that you feel great about it. I didn't feel that meaning waking up every day. So that's also part of the story. And when I think about long term, my goal is to help people, and ideally to help them through empowering them with education. So to me, education at a personal level is what drove me, is what saved me in a lot of ways. I was extremely fortunate to have access to good education, and I do recognize that is not something that is granted. It should not never be granted, and I want to help to whatever scale it may be. Again, entrepreneurship doesn't need to be multi-billion-dollar companies. I want to make a difference. So that's the lens, which remains true to this date, that I used in my MBA applications.
I'm curious, when you were thinking about getting your MBA and you were saying, okay, I want to embark further on this entrepreneurial journey, were you seeing the MBA as a way to get technical skills for entrepreneurship, access to funding, inspiration about the ideas, like source for co-founders? What specifically did you talk about that you wanted to get from the MBA to help build your entrepreneurial tool set?
Yeah, that's a great question. And in all transparency, I didn't have the full answers going into the MBA or when I was applying. For me, I literally saw an MBA as a way to solve for freedom first, before solving for entrepreneurship. But when it came to entrepreneurship, it's mostly the networking one. So that can help in multiple dimensions. It could be raising funds, but also just brainstorming ideas. And down the line, it will be extremely, extremely helpful to have had the MBA. During the MBA journey itself, as I mentioned, I took a lot of entrepreneurial classes. It was definitely a good first step into the ecosystem. And not only about like trying to find ideas, there's an innovation class, which I really, really enjoyed. Also thinking about the legal aspect of it. So things I wasn't aware of, where, for example, the legal aspects of entrepreneurship and the structure that is most optimal to use when you launch, when you go on your growth journey. So these things definitely I learned. At least I got a first step at them during business school. In terms of, I think that those would be my main inputs. I think raising funds is not something I was thinking about at that moment. And it's not even something I'm thinking about right now. The journey is a long journey and I'm enjoying the journey. But the end goal, I'm getting closer to every day.
Would love to hear about what were the most challenging aspects of the application for you.
So early on, there was a time when I said, okay, you know what, I want to go for an MBA. So what do I do? So I started looking it up. I looked up even MBA consulting firm. They give these free first sessions. So I started gathering the information on what I needed to apply. And I realized quickly that GMAT would be the main bottleneck. Maybe it's an easy one and I just go over it very quickly, but it wasn't the case for me. I do things very methodically. And I'm very rigorous and try to like set up the steps for it. So I signed up for an MBA class. I think there were 10 sessions. I would go there and I would, along with other MBA applicants, learn about the GMAT questions, learn about tricks and so on. So I did that. And then I did a lot of practice for a month and a half and I go do my first attempt. I think the score was 680 or something like that. So below what I needed. And I knew that I would not invest the time and financial resources towards an MBA if it's not one of the top MBAs. Again, the goal was to gain that international access, and it's only the top MBAs and mostly the top three that would give me access to that. So it was not enough. I told myself, okay, you know what? I'm gonna double down the effort, and I became very, very devoted to it for a period of 2 additional months. So every day I would do practices. I finish at Wayfair and I go home and I do just GMAT. It was too much. In retrospect, I should not have done that, and I would never recommend anyone do that. So I do those 2 months, and I have the next test happening, and my score was even below the first one. So I think it was like 650. I can't even recall. So I tell myself at that moment, and by the way, like it's really driven by the English portion of it. The math portion was straightforward, but the English portion didn't suit me for two main reasons. One, I was not a native speaker, and I think native speakers have a natural advantage in the GMAT. And the second one is the way it was, especially the reading section. I don't think the way the test wants you to think. I think very, very differently. So it was a challenge. So after that second attempt, I told myself, you know what, maybe the MBA path is not for me. But maybe I'll do a master's, maybe in Europe, and then continue my career. But you know what, to apply for round one, I could have one more attempt a month later at the latest. So I sign up for it, but I don't practice at all. I literally did not open the book because I told myself it was not necessary, right? I did the maximum I could, and it really just hurt the score. So I'm not gonna review whatsoever at all. And I go there in a very chill mode, to be honest. And at that moment, for some reason, I get I think a 710, which was good enough given my good GPA from college to aspire for the good schools. So that was my GMAT journey. Very unpredictable. And I'm not, even for the SITs, right? Like the SITs, I scored poorly on, but that was because I didn't speak English back then. But at the end, it didn't really impact my academic ability.
We feel you. It's a painful journey. What's also interesting about what you said is like finding the right balance of studying, but then taking your foot off the gas and going in with the right mindset. You did mention you participated in one of these like MBA prep classes. I also did like the Kaplan or Manhattan prep thing. Did you find it useful or not? Like, would you recommend it to others, or what do you think?
Frankly, I would not recommend it. Personally, even as an international getting exposed to GMAT for the first time, I don't think it helped that much.
I took one of those courses. For me, it was like, it's great for a baseline. Like, it'll get you to the 650. But then if you want to get to the next level, I feel like the questions you miss are more to do with what you specifically need to work on. So if you want to you need more personalized work. I ended up working with a tutor afterwards, and the tutor could focus on exactly the kinds of questions that I was stumbling on.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Totally agree with that. I think that the idea of having a tutor, individual tutor, can definitely be much more beneficial to get there.
How did you choose the final list of schools that you chose to apply to?
I knew the schools I would apply to, like it's mostly the M7. For round one, though, I didn't have enough time, and I didn't want to rush my applications for the ones I cared for the most. I ended up applying for Boot, Sloan, and Columbia for round one. So I ended up getting invited for Boot and Columbia. And Columbia I actually decided to give up on because, they have this binding thing. I don't know if they still have it now. But essentially, if you do the interview and you get it, technically you're binded to go there and give up on the other applications. So I decided not to go through with it, and I got into Boot. That was my round one. So as I got into Boot, obviously I tell myself, okay, this is achievable. It is within the realm of possibilities. When I went to campus, great experience, nothing bad to say about it, but it just didn't feel like a fit for me at that moment. I did make the deposit because you don't know what's going to happen. But I felt that it wasn't as international as I wanted it to be. It was, I don't know if I really wanted to be in Chicago. So it felt further away from my home base, So it wasn't a good fit for me. And I was applying for the other schools in round two anyways. I applied it for 4 schools. It was HBS, Stanford, Wharton, but also INSEAD at that moment. I wasn't invited for HBS or Stanford, and I got into Wharton and INSEAD. So ultimately, the choice was between these two.
You went to the Welcome Weekend, which it's valuable. It's important to go because you get a vibe, and these schools, they're similar, but the culture is different. And you also see yourself, okay, I'm going to be in Chicago for 2 years. And as you start to build your network where you go to school. And so if you're going to go to Booth, you're going to build a more Midwest network. And if you're going to go to Stanford, you're going to build a little bit more on the West Coast versus Wharton was an East Coast choice. Did you do the Wharton Welcome Weekend as well? And what spoke to you if you did that?
No, I did not. It was COVID times. But essentially, as COVID picked up, I remember I was at Wayfair and the director said, you know what, starting next week, we're going to just tentatively doing a 2-week remote setup just for 2 weeks. It was before everything got shut down. And I considered going to Morocco, but my director, he said, it's very uncertain, probably don't go. Okay, so I said, fine, I'll stay. The day after, it was the last day in the office, and Morocco, shut down borders with all countries, but the US was still open. So I took the flight the same day, and that's how I left Boston. It's always a little bit sad because I spent so much time there and I left it in such an abrupt way. So I pack up anything I could in just 2 hours, and I go home. And Morocco was shut down in a very strict manner. So I received the news when I was in Morocco. And then there was a huge debate: should I defer? Should I not? Contrary to HBS at that time, I think HBS gave the flexibility to defer to everyone very early on. For us, we got that flexibility as I think only international students did. It was a little bit late, and I had to make a decision. I considered it both ways. So I did not go to the Welcome Weekend, but I had all the virtual version of that. Not as good, but yeah.
That's heartbreaking. And that's also, yeah, that's an incredibly stressful time. And then to have some happy news in there was probably really exciting.
Absolutely, yeah. I was very happy about it. And one thing that I should specify is that Wharton was an amazing choice for me, also because of that dual degree program. I don't know. I think there is no big awareness around it. It's called the Lauder program. So it's a Wharton / Lauder. And out of, let's say, 900 MBA students, about 70 of those do this dual degree program. So you get your MBA from Wharton and your master's in international studies from the Lauder Institute. Not advertised very significantly. You only realize what it is once you get in. And I was incredibly impressed by the level and the caliber of my classmates, but also the alumni network. It's quite impressive. You travel the world with your classmates, literally. You have different tracks. You don't start in August, you would start in May. And for a month and a half, 2 months period, you travel and then you go back, you do classes just for the Lauder portion, it's the Lauder preterm. And then you start with your MBA class with the Wharton preterm. An amazing experience. Really, really, I'm grateful for it. Amazing network. A very tight-knit community. Even at Wharton, we had our own building, literally just for Lauder. So it really strengthens the ties. Obviously, I think I missed a big portion of it because of the virtual context. Ultimately, I ended up attending, not deferring. I just wanted to not waste time. It was my mantra.
I don't think it's a well-known program. And clarify, that's something that you apply the same time that you're submitting the MBA application. Is that correct?
Absolutely. It's part of the flow. At some point, they say they want to apply for the Lauder program. And by the way, the way I learned about it was through an ex-Wayfair colleague. Essentially, he did the undergraduate version of that at Wharton undergrad. So it was called the Enhancement program. This is just the, let's say, graduate version of it. And that's how I learned about it. And yes, as I was applying, it felt like a great fit because it's tailored for you to become a global leader. Intrinsically, it has a higher population that is international, which mattered a lot to me at that point. And it gave you access to, in my opinion, more opportunities. It even has its own recruiting resources. There is one person, amazing woman who has been working there for years, and she helps us connect with alumni individually. So it's a level of connections that, as just a Wharton student, I wouldn't have had, especially given how big the class is. So I highly recommend for anyone who wants to be global to at least consider it. An amazing program. The MBA for me, it's not an academic experience. Julia, you alluded to earlier to what I may have learned for entrepreneurship. For me, it's not academic learning. I think if you go through a path like Wayfair before business school, your business acumen is there. I don't think you're gonna improve it that much. It's more about gaining access to different perspectives and the people and the mindsets and so on. If there were one highlight, I would say it's being part of what we call the Leadership Fellow program. So the Wharton experience starts a little bit differently versus other schools. You come in and there is a preterm. There is an academic aspect of it, meaning you go to class, you study leadership mostly with world-renowned professors like Adam Grant is one of the 4 key faculty members who do that. And I was an LF, so Leadership Fellow. What this means is you lead the orientation, you lead the preterm, you welcome the students, and the journey as an LF to me is twofold. One is like the preparation for it, so the training, and in my opinion, that a group of I think around 50 people, 50 LFs, is the most impressive group I was ever part of in my life. No question asked. And I think it might be the most impressive one I will ever be part of in my life. People who are so driven. I learned so much from them. I felt like I was the error in the selection process. It's a very selective process to be part of that group. Forever be grateful for it because it exposed me to things I didn't even know existed from a leadership perspective. The other thing about it is that we were in charge of welcoming the first class back in person for COVID. So like you would handle situations that you would never, like nobody ever faced before. Somebody comes in, this person is positive. So what do we do? Do we close everything? We had a lot of planning to do, and it was a very, very rewarding experience. And I will always be grateful for it. So being an LF really changed everything. And just to even clarify the pre-term, the Wharton pre-term. So there is that class, but there's also what we call team-based learning. So you're put into teams of 5 or 6 people as you come into Wharton, and that's your team learning, your learning team. And the bonds that you can create through that experience with those 5 other people are so strong. You also go through a simulation as part of the class. So you're one of you is the CEO. So how do you determine who is the CEO? How do you delegate tasks? So all of that was an amazing experience as a new class member coming into Wharton, but also as an LF later down the line.
Would love to hear a little bit more about the post-school or even the MBA summer internship. You had talked a lot about consulting. What was that recruiting experience like for you? So
at that moment, consulting was the goal, at least the first step goal. So I applied for the MBB firms, and I don't know what happened. It just didn't go well for me for that internship recruiting. The COVID setup, the time difference, there were just too many factors that led to, not performing particularly well in interviews. But then it actually opened a door that I didn't even suspect at that moment, in that I could go and intern in Dubai with another consulting firm, Strategy Ed. And that was an amazing, probably the best summer experience I've had in a very, very long time. Very well timed given the COVID struggles. It was the first time I was able to leave the country after COVID. So I did an internship in consulting, the typical consulting internship. You go in, you're part of a team working on a project. For me, it was an interesting project working with a big hospital chain. So I could understand the dynamics locally. And I definitely felt happy. I felt very happy about it. I felt happy being in a country which to me felt more welcoming, given my roots, my origins, and so on. And so definitely consider going there full-time, especially as Dubai is very financially attractive. So I got my full-time offer going back into my second year, which was definitely great. But I knew I wanted to still try recruiting for MBB firms. And I did the recruiting journey again. And this time ended up getting into BCG and McKinsey. And choosing between the two was not easy because, first of all, I applied for McKinsey Canada because I knew somebody mentioned the process to become free in Canada from a visa standpoint is much faster, much more meritocratic in the sense that it's not a lottery system. You have a background that justifies it, you get access to it. And that's something that I'm very grateful for in Canada, and that I really appreciate Canada for. And I'm very excited to be here for that because today, I have that freedom that I didn't have before. It changes your perspective. It changes your view on the future. And BCG was in the US. And then I had the full-time offer in Dubai, which financially was literally more than double. So the least financially interesting, attractive one was definitely the Canada option. The more interesting from a work perspective probably was the US option. And one that combines a bit of both was the Dubai option. So I just did some deep thinking into myself, what is most important to me. And it was an easy decision at the end of the day. What I wanted to solve for is that freedom. For me, freedom is number one. Down the line, I will be able to solve for the other, factors. So I decided to go to McKinsey. The journey was very interesting. I enjoyed my time there a lot. Definitely got to meet some very inspiring leaders. I got to see why there is this, this aura around it from the outside, but I also realized the realities of it. It's not all of that. There's a lot of things that personally I don't agree with, a lot of corporate politics that I honestly just don't want to be part of. So when I had my permanent residency, so then start thinking about what I really wanted to do. And that's always been getting into the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So one thing I did that I couldn't have done otherwise without the PR is do some sort of an incubator program, not to raise money. It was more to establish a local network and start understanding the VC ecosystem, which will be very important down the line. So I did that for a couple of months. And then in the meantime, I was considering different startup options. And that's how I ended up in my current role, which I really, really enjoy, much more than I ever enjoyed consulting. I'm at Clutch right now. So Clutch is the equivalent of Carvana in the US. I get to work at a rather senior level, overseeing a lot of different parts of the business. And so I can get exposed to all of it from a startup perspective, like learn very quickly. Number two, the growth is quite significant. So we're expecting to double this year. Number three, it's not only a marketplace. It's not people who wants to sell their cars, put their cars online. Whoever wants to sell us their car will buy your car. We'll give you a firm offer right now. So we hold the inventory, we hold the risk, and we recondition the car to make sure that they meet the standard for customers. So there's a whole operational aspect that I had never had access to before. So the learning is very, very tangible in a way that I had never experienced before. And to me, it really validates that what I was always thinking, in that the startup ecosystem is much more tangible, and I find myself in it much better. And there's less politics in the sense that you need to act quickly, and it's about getting the work done, not about making it look good, which tends to be the case in a lot of big corporations, in my opinion. The other thing is that I validate my long-term goal of always being in an entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Looking back on your application journey, your time at Wharton, what advice would you give to someone who's thinking about applying?
There are two different components to the application. First, like the pre-application stage, think deeply about the schools you want to be part of, even though you can tell yourself, if I get into one of these schools, I'll be happy. The reality is that each school has its own personality. It's really, really different. As I mentioned earlier, that the boot experience was just not a fit for me personally. So try to diversify your options to the extent that you can. The GMAT component, it can be as easy as just taking it and it's just intuitive and you get your 750 and you're all set. It can also be a long journey. It really depends on how you mind things. One thing I would say is just never give up and try it again. The other thing during the application process, so personally, I did leverage like an MBA consultant for a couple of applications. It was beneficial for sure. And then there is the stage after you get in. If you do have a choice, just take the time. There is no rush. Take the time to evaluate the opportunities from all dimensions. It can be financial, but also I recommend going to the schools. And now it might be like an investment in time and money, but just go visit the schools because it's going to make a big difference down the line.
This was really awesome. You gave a lot of great advice, a lot of really good perspective, especially for international students. I think they'll really value what you said. So yeah, we really appreciate you taking the time today.
Yeah, thank you, Simo. It was so good to talk to you.
Yeah, and thank you as well. I think this would be extremely helpful to a lot of people. I'm not talking about this episode specifically. I'm talking about the general. I've listened to a few episodes and they were particularly insightful. And I wish I had those insights when I was applying. So thank you for that as well.